I'm Daisy Dawn. I am a second-year graduate student studying molecular biophysics and biochemistry here at Yale University. This is my second year serving as the STEM Education and Outreach Director, and this year as the Director of Digital Education, so essentially organizing all the webinars for CLGSMI. So I'm really excited to introduce all of you guys to our speaker for today on overview of the NIH F31 Ruth L. Kirschstein Predoctoral Individual Fellowship, specifically for the parent diversity. And we have with us today a very recent NIH F31 fellow herself, Mónica, who is a PhD candidate studying clinical psychology at the University of Arizona. And I know from just conversing with Mónica in preparation for today, Mónica's worked very hard, on her application, and after winning it, I know you guys, watching this today and then the days leading up to your very own NIH F31 deadlines, you'll learn so much from her today, understanding the necessary components and pieces to be addressed in your applications this year and or the next. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mónica. Please take it away.
Hi everyone. So my name is Mónica. I'm really happy to be here and be sharing with you how to, like an overview about the F31. It's overwhelming, but I hope that you guys, are not discouraged, to apply after we finish this. So to start, a little bit about me. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. Then I went to the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras campus, where I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. I did research as an undergrad, and then I went to the University of Iowa to do a postbachelor research education program, which is called PrEP, and it's also from the NIH. So if anyone ever has any questions about doing a postbac, you can ask me. And then I went to the University of Arizona and started my clinical psychology PhD. I'm in my 4th year right now and have about 2 years left. And yeah, so before we start, I just wanted to say that, this presentation is intended as like an overview of the F31 Predoctoral Fellowship application, kind of like an introduction. I'll be talking about the parts of the application that are considered, more time consuming and that are kind of like the ones that are going to be weighted more by the reviewers. The information on this presentation comes from the NIH websites. That's what I used. The book called the Grant Application Writers Workbook. There's an NIH version, there's an NSF version. If you're applying to the NSF, you could also check that out. Maybe your advisor has one, so ask them first. And, my personal experience in submitting a successful application. If and when you apply, talk to your graduate advisor, talk to your department's grant manager, and also talk to successful applicants in your department, because they're the best source and they can actually give you their materials, and it'll make it easier. And also make sure you read the announcement page on the NIH website thoroughly. And again, my experiences with the F31 Diversity Supplement. So let's start. A little bit of information about the F31. This is actually from the announcement website. So who is eligible? Any applicant with the skills, knowledge, or resources needed to be a PI of your own project. Individuals from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, as well as individuals with disabilities. There's also a list in this website that tells you, what other types of groups they consider to be underrepresented. So you should check that out. Show evidence of high academic performance in sciences and a commitment for you to be an independent researcher, in your career. They want to know that you are that's like your passion, that you're going to be a researcher. And you can also apply if you are an MD PhD, if you're in any combined professional clinical research program in the biomedical, behavioral, or clinical sciences. And Hispanic serving institutions And historically Black colleges are like really encouraged to apply to this. So there are different deadlines. There is one deadline, April 8th. There is one on, one second, I can see. There is one on August 8th, and there is one in December 8th. So you should definitely plan accordingly. You can resubmit or submit on any of these dates. You should work on your application at least 6 months before the deadline. That should be, you should start thinking about it at least 6 months before. So what happens if you get this? You get a stipend for your living expenses, which is approximately $25,000 for a year. And you can get up to 5 years, I believe, of support. You get a percentage of your tuition and fees paid by the NIH, and you get an institutional allowance, which is like $5,000 for health insurance, research supply, equipment, books, and travel to scientific meetings. So this is what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to, give you some tips, advice on how to plan, how to choose a sponsor, the actual application, and I'll be showing you screenshots of mine, submitting the application, what happens after, and kind of like the timeline that you should be expecting. So first of all, planning ahead. You will need an ERA Commons account. This is where you're going to receive, your summary statement, your impact score, everything. So it's very important that you familiarize yourself with the website that looks like this. And then you will also need an assist account, which is where you will submit all of your materials. This account is made to you by your department's grant manager, so you have to let them know a couple of months before that you're applying, because they are also going to be working with professors submitting R01s and other grants. And so you want them to keep you like on the radar. You will also find a guide in this website that is going to tell you what's needed in each section of the fellowship. And this was actually very useful. And it's also very useful if you send it to your sponsor or your advisor, so they also know what exactly needs to go here. And this is what the Assist website looks like. And here in that little box, that's where you see the application guide, and you can download it there. Understand the time you'll need to complete the fellowship. It takes a long time. Check with your sponsor, your co-sponsor, your consultants, and also, like letter writers, if they have the time to help you, if they have the time to be in this project with you, not only before the deadline, but also, the years that you're going to be proposing the training. Any questions up to here or no? Okay.
So far. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the program announcement website, this is very important. So you should make sure that you and the grant manager read it carefully so you don't miss anything. And I cannot stress this enough. I'll tell you now. This is what the website looks like. And these are actually all of the institutes that are participating in, the F31. They fund F31s. If an institute's not here, it doesn't fund an F31. So, you should be working, your research should be related to at least one of these institutes, mission, vision, etc. And then down here, very important, it's the announcement number. So when I applied, I don't know what happened. I didn't read well the number. The grant manager didn't read well the number, and actually, we were applying for something else, not for the F31, and I, found that out a couple of days before the deadline. So it was just stress that I didn't need, and I just really want everyone to know that you should really read this website thoroughly. And there's the link to it. Now, choosing a sponsor. So the sponsor should be an expert in the research area of the proposal. This can be your advisor or another faculty member. The co-sponsor and consultant, a consultant is someone who's related to your project can be from other schools. The advisor can be from another school, but just make sure that it makes sense for them to be at another school. So for example, if you are at Harvard, then, you know, having someone from like Boston University or somewhere close, you know, makes sense because you can travel and you can see them regularly. But for example, if I'm here in Arizona, having a sponsor or a co-sponsor like in Harvard would be kind of difficult because I wouldn't be able to see them and they wouldn't be able to be so involved in my project. So just to keep that in mind. My sponsor was my advisor, my graduate advisor. They should have many publications in the area. They should have mentored another F award, another K award, or another fellowship such as the NSF. If the sponsor does not have a strong track record in mentorship, you should consider adding a co-sponsor that does, so someone maybe more senior. That's actually what I did because my advisor is considered junior faculty. And so I added someone that was more senior, that had R01 funding, had more students, had a greater track record for mentoring. And the sponsor should have funding in the proposed area of research. So they just want to make sure that if the F31 doesn't come through, or I don't know, if something happens, that you're taken care of and that you have money. Okay. Oh yeah.
We have a question from Michaela. Yeah. And so they ask, how many co-sponsors can you actually have?
So you can have one co-sponsor. So it should be a sponsor and a co-sponsor. Those are like the primary people in your application. And then consultants, you can have, you know, as many as it makes sense to have them. And collaborators as well, you know, as long as it makes sense to have that amount, then you're good.
Thank you.
So now the application. Again, I'm going to be talking about the, you know, the parts that I think are more important and are more time consuming. So this is the first part that, you know, in the order that the final application comes out, this is the first thing. So applicants' background and goals for fellowship and training. You're going to have 6 pages to do this. So here you have different sections. You're going to talk about career development. So you're going to talk about research projects you've been involved in and the outcome of these projects. Have you published? Have you, you know, presented a poster, given a talk, anything like that? You should put it in this section. You should talk about how your experience has influenced the training plan, and you should do this, like there's different ways to do this. Honestly, in the 6 pages that you have within every section, there are different ways you can do it, as long as you know, talk about everything that they want you to talk about. But for example, to talk about how my experience influenced the training plan, I wrote an essay, just, you know, saying how every single experience led to me wanting a career in what I was proposing. Your sponsor should talk about your career development in detail in this statement. So make sure you're both on the same page. This is very important. You know, anything that you write in the parts that you're responsible for, your advisor or your sponsor should really be echoing everything you say, because it just shows coherence and it shows that everyone is like on the same page, and you know that if you win, everything's gonna work out. So there is also another part, they're the training activities. It should be training that your graduate program cannot offer you. So by this I mean, well, I'm going to explain it with an example. So I'm in clinical psychology and I'm specializing in neuropsychology. I couldn't have, like, one of my training activities or training goals could not have been to want to learn how to do neuropsychological assessment, or how to do psychotherapy, because those are things that my program is giving to me. And so, you know, why would the NIH fund me to do this? Because I'm already getting it. So it should be things, these are examples. You know, I want to learn how to do these stats. Specifically, I want to take this course. I want to take a workshop. I want to go work in another lab, for example. And then they should differentiate you from your sponsor. They, you know, your ideas are probably going to be related, but they shouldn't be like the same thing, because the NIH is looking for, you know, new researchers that are going to bring new ideas to the table. And if you're proposing the same as your advisor, then that kind of defeats the purpose. So something here in this little box that says goal benchmarks, that was something that a student told me to do. It's not in like the training guides or anything, but I think it's a good idea. So the goal benchmark is kind of you saying like, you know, how am I gonna measure success by doing this? So for example, like, why do I want to do it and what am I gonna get out of it? So here in this goal, I actually proposed that I would go to another university and work in another lab to learn how to, you know, run a lab that is specializing in Hispanic health. And my goal benchmark, you know, was like, I'll probably work in a project. I'll probably have a publication. I'll present at a meeting, you know? So those are things that you should tell them, like, why do I want to do this? It's very important to add training activities that are related to grant writing, publishing papers, presenting research. These are all things that, you know, an independent researcher should be very good at. So you should take advantage of this training and, you know, maybe look for a grant writing workshop in your school. You could say that, so I plan to apply to the F32. So the F32 is for a postdoc, for when you go to postdoc. So, you know, I said like, I want to start writing my F32. If you plan on doing a K award, which is for after postdoc, for like your career, then you can also say it here. And again, you know, the benchmark, like, when am I going to do this, etc. Be very concrete about everything that you propose. You should let them know that you thought about it and you have a timeline to complete it. If you say you are going to, for example, I said, I'm going to go to this lab. So actually I said July of 2020, but, you know, I just got my my fellowship, but like, you know, say I'm going to go in the summer of 2021, July 2021. I'm going to take the grant workshop in 2022 because I want to apply to a K award in this year. So just be very concrete about it. And again, you know, your sponsor should know about this, and make sure that these are feasible given how much time you have left in the program. You know, don't try to, you know, propose like a million goals if you know that you're not gonna do them. The reviewers are probably gonna know that you're not gonna do them as well. And also, if you have, you know, take into account that after you submit this, you're gonna have to wait like a year for this to come through. So make sure, you know, you keep that in mind. And if you have like to wait a year and you have only 2 years left in the program, then you shouldn't be proposing to do things that are like out of reach. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Then there's the specific aims page. You have one page for this. Here I, you know, put like a little example of my aims, and you should try to have no more than 3, just to be like concise. Also, the specific aims page could be the first page that your reviewers see. You know, it doesn't mean that they're gonna see it in the order that you put it in. So like, they may see the specific aims and they just read the specific aims. And if they're interested, they keep going. If they're not, that's just gonna, so you should be very concise. They should not depend on each other. So if aim 1 doesn't happen, make sure that that has nothing to do with if aim 2 happens. And it should differ from the work being done by your sponsor. And again, you only have 1 page to do this. So maybe at the beginning, you can talk a little bit about the literature leading up to your aims. And then in the bottom, like half a page, you can do the aims and write like, what are you expecting, etc.
Monica, we have a question from Michelle. And they ask, do you have to report to the NIH on your progress towards achieving these goals after receiving a fellowship?
Yes, yes. So actually, I haven't had to do it yet, but I just signed like all the paperwork, and it says that they are going to be like every 6 months. Every 6 months, I have to write a progress report for the NIH and tell them how I've been, progressing. And then it also says that years later, they're still going to be contacting you because they want to know like what you've been doing. But also something important to say, if something doesn't happen, one of your goals doesn't happen because COVID, for example, maybe that's going to impact how you do it, then it's not like you're going to be in trouble with the NIH or anything. You just have to make sure that you have a very good reason why you can't do it any other way.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. That was a great question.
Okay, so then comes the research strategy. You have 6 more pages here. The research strategy is how, you should really make a point of saying like how your research is going to improve public health related problems. Why is this so important that you need to fund it? And you should also take into account the institute that you want to be funded by. So, kind of be on the same page as them. It should be related to your training. Make sure to show that the project will serve as a good training experience as well. And then, so I took a little screenshot of, the significance part of my research strategy. And, even like the first sentence, just make sure it's like, boom, like this is a real problem. So like, there are 5 million individuals diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Hispanics are expected to experience the greatest increase. Like that's important. So make sure you write that. Be very specific about the scientific premise behind every aim. The scientific premise is kind of just the literature behind every aim. Be very clear about the method that you're going to use, how many people, how you're going to recruit them, what measures are you going to use. Make sure you explain them, because although who's going to review this is people that are, experts in kind of like the general field, they may not know exactly what you're talking about. So you need to like make sure that anybody who reads this understands. Mention the analysis, the statistical analysis you're going to use. And if you have preliminary data, include it, even if you have a really small sample. So here, that graph that I took a screenshot of, I only had 5 people. I had a pilot at the time of 5 people, and I included it. And, this data is probably going to change, but it's good to show that you're doing it already and that, hey, like it's feasible. I did it on 5 people. And then you should also make sure to identify potential confounds and how you're going to address them. So in research and science, things are not going to go the way that you want them to most of the time. So if something were to happen, like, what am I going to do about it? Don't selectively report literature that is consistent with your hypothesis. we know that like you may have a bunch of papers that are like supporting your theories and everything, but we also know that, especially in like human research, that there are going to be a couple of papers that are going to say, hey, like we didn't find this effect. So you should also make sure that you report it and say like, hey, I may not find it as these people did. It's just to be thorough. Include a power analysis. So this is how many people do I need to recruit in order to detect an effect, if there is one. Again, I'm talking about human subjects because that was my experience. If you're working with animals and specimens, like I wouldn't really know what you would do, but just make sure you have all your bases covered. And include a timeline from when the activities in the research strategy will be occurring. When am I going to recruit? I'm going to recruit for 6 months. I'm going to collect data for 6 months. And then in the next 6 months, I'm going to analyze the data. Just make sure you're very thorough. And make sure it's feasible. Again, you don't want to propose something that is going to be really hard for you to finish. Then there's the Biosketch. So the Biosketch is actually, the NIH provides a template for you to use. You can download it. It has different sections. So the first section is education and training. You can see in my screenshot there. You write your undergrad, you write any other certificates you have, and where you're doing your PhD. Then you have an area where you can write a personal statement. This is a scientific biography about where you've been and what your professional aims are. Definitely differentiate yourself from your sponsor. Then you have positions and honors. If you have other fellowships, if you have awards from your department, they go here. Contributions to science. So these are like all of the projects that you've been a part in. And you should write like an abstract detailing what the project was about, cite a publication if you have one. And for this fellowship, you should at least have like a first author publication or a co-author publication, or something under review, to be competitive. But if you have things that are in prep, or just submitted, you don't know if it's under review yet, then you should also include it here. And they're also going to ask you for additional information, research support, scholastic, if you have any other grants that you've won, scholastic performance, and you have to write about the coursework that you have from undergrad and graduate school.
Okay, thank you. We have a comment from Yesenia, and they say that for animals, I believe you also need a power analysis and an IACUC,
Okay.
which is, and I believe you're correct. But we do have a question from Michaela, and Michaela has asked, would we include things like CITI training and certifications? CITI stands for Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative.
Yeah. So actually, there's actually another part that's for the responsible conduct and research, and there is where you're gonna talk about that. So for here, like for example, if you had some people do like certificates in science communication or something. So if you have that, then you should definitely include it here. But something for like the city certification, you could do it. There's actually a part where they're going to ask you for it. So, but great question. Is there another question?
Yes, Michelle Ramos. They ask, I might have missed this, but for the F31, there's 2 to apply for. One is specifically diversity. Which one is better to apply for?
Well, definitely it's gonna depend. So if you consider yourself an underrepresented minority and the NIH also considers it, then you should definitely apply for the diversity one. But if you don't, then you should apply for the other one. But there's really no difference in like how they are gonna review it, how the point system, nothing like that. So it's really up to you and I guess how you identify as.
Okay, thank you.
Now you're also gonna need letters from your consultants and collaborators. So the consultant is anyone that's gonna be involved in your project. It can be someone you want to work with and as part of the training plan. It is useful to have letters from anyone remotely associated with your project. So if you have, for example, someone that's gonna do like a faculty that you're gonna consult stats with or analysis, then you should definitely have a letter from them. The letters are a big part of reviewers' determination of your consultant's belief in and commitment in you. It is common for a consultant to say what they're gonna do, what they're gonna contribute, and so you should be on the same page with them. So for example, if you're using a consultant or even a sponsor's resources, like if you want to go to their lab, it is useful for them to mention it on the letter and say like, yes, I want them to come to my lab and receive them, just to show the reviewers that you know them, you've talked to them. Do we have another question? No? Okay.
There was a comment though. Someone did comment on, sorry, excuse me, on Michelle's question. I was told there's no reason to apply to a non-diversity one if you are URM. So yeah, so it's all about identification.
Yeah. Okay, so here, Michelle, I think, asked the question about the city program. So there is actually a part about the responsible conduct in research training. It's a page. You are gonna talk about the training that you have in responsible conduct of research and also that you will be acquiring throughout your time being funded by the fellowship. It should be ongoing. Ideally, it should not be online, but I mean, this is before COVID, so it's probably gonna be online. Usually schools, my school at least, have a workshop for this specifically for like training and responsible research meant for anyone who has like an NSF and NIH that needs it. So you should check that with your school. Usually it's like in the library or something. You should provide details on course content as well as individual mentorship that will support ethics training, is essential. Also, so over here, I don't know if you can see my, yeah. Oh, okay. So actually here, so I said I have my city certificate, and I've had it since undergrad and I've kept up with it, and, I'm gonna do it every time that it expires. And be specific about the frequency and duration of the training. These are explicit scoring criteria. So, if you say, so I said, I'm gonna attend 5 workshops. I said the name of them. I said, when I was gonna enroll. I also said that I would, talk with my sponsor and co-sponsor about ethics whenever it came up. So that's something you can also do. And exactly, name the faculty who will mentor you in the responsible conduct in research, and the specific role that they're gonna play.
We have a question from Yesenia. Awesome question. Keep the questions coming.
Yeah.
So they ask, can the consultant be someone who is currently part of your training and with whom you aspire to do a postdoc with?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that is actually, it's something that, can be done. They could be like a consultant, a collaborator. You already know them, so you should mention that. If you're already working with them, that's even better. And then if you want to, if it's someone you want to do a postdoc with, you should really think about somehow one of your training goals should be about the F32. I mean, if you want to apply for an F32 or something for postdoc, then you should try to bring that person into a goal that has to do with like the F32. But definitely can be someone that's already in your training.
Awesome question. We have 2 more questions. Michaela has asked, if you already took the RCR course at your university, would you just list that?
Yes, you would say that you took it, but you should also think about other things that you can take. Like it shouldn't be just one thing that so for example, I took an ethics course because it's like required for my PhD, and I wrote it there, so.
Okay, and my last question is from Angela, and they ask, what if they are research associates who work in your lab? And I believe this is referring to consultants, but if I've misinterpreted your question, please correct me, Angela. So they ask, what if they are research associates who work in your lab?
So in my lab, I'm not sure what research associate is. Is this like a senior research assistant?
Let's wait until they reply. Okay. But Angela has said yes, this is in regards to consultants.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. If they are an integral part of your of your project, then definitely they can be a consultant or a collaborator, and they don't necessarily have to be faculty or anything. So if they are gonna be helping you, then yeah.
Angela has just clarified, yeah, so it's full-time researchers, but not postdocs. Exactly.
Okay, then yeah, so I would say, especially if this person is like, because I know that some labs, they have someone like a research associate, they have them, they're the ones who do all the stats analysis or something like that. Or like in imaging, they do the imaging. So definitely you should have them write you a letter and be on board with helping you.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the questions. Thank you, Monica. Okay.
Then you're gonna have a part again, so it's human subjects. If you are working with animals, you're gonna have another section, but this was the section that I had to work with, so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. Be careful describing procedures you will use for protecting human subjects. Make sure you're always minimizing harm. If, for example, you are doing like a MRI study, make sure you have you check if a woman is pregnant, for example. Make sure you check if they have any metal in their body, etc. And you should write it down. Mistakes in this section can be perceived as evidence that you are not being well trained in procedures in your field, so be careful. Information in this section overlaps with your IRB proposal. The IRB is the Institutional Review Board. They oversee all the research being conducted at a university. So if you or your advisor has had to get IRB approval for a project, then everything that you wrote in that is actually gonna be asked in this section. So it's gonna like overlap. So think of it as something that you may already have. And that you should probably plan to get before you apply. It's not necessary, but it's gonna help you. So, and make sure you mention how you're gonna keep data confidential and how you're gonna minimize potential risks. So, I'm not saying that I'm gonna, like the only one that's gonna know their names is me. They're gonna have a code. no one can access this, etc. So actually, we went through like the most important parts of the application. Now it's about submitting the application. So plan to finish your application at least 1 week before the deadline. Make sure you talk to your grant manager about this and other people in your school so that you know exactly when you need to have it done. But you definitely have to have it done before the deadline, like early before the deadline. You'll have to send it to your grant manager in your department. They'll send it to the grant manager at the school level, and they're the ones who are going to submit it to the NIH. So that was like, interesting to learn about. And then finishing it early gives the school time to check for errors. For example, I remember for mine, like 2 days before the deadline, I got an email saying that I needed a letter of support from my university. So, I ended up having it on time, but it's something that, may have been like, I didn't need the stress, basically. So just make sure you do it, with time. And then what happens next? Oh, someone has a question.
Someone says some schools have internal review, so make sure you keep track of all deadlines. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So that's something that probably someone in your department is gonna, make sure that you ask them about it if they don't tell you. Yeah. And then what happens next? So you wait. Approximately 3 months after you submit your application, it's going to get reviewed. It's going to go to a group of people that are going to review it. You get 3 reviewers. Within a week, you'll know if it was discussed or not, and if you received an impact score. You'll receive a summary statement. This has your reviewer comments and your score, and it also says what they talked about in the meeting also. And you get this whether or not it was discussed. So you know how to better it if you need to resubmit. And then, talk after you get your summary statement, talk to your sponsor, advisor, and you should contact your program officer to plan for next steps. So the program officer is the person who's kind of in charge of your grant. And you're gonna have their number and email in the ERA comments. So you can either email them and ask for a meeting, or you can call them, and like that's their job. Like, don't feel shy about it, because actually my program officer was very helpful after I got the summary statement, and they were there so in the meeting, so they're gonna know what people said about your application, and they're gonna say it to you, like it's not a secret. Do we have a question?
So we have another question, but it's not related to the slide, and it's also from Angela. Awesome questions, Angela. So they've asked, so my question is not related to the current slide, but does whether or not your PI is well-funded affect your chances of receiving the NIH F31? For example, if you're part of a large lab, would they not give you the award because your PI has more than enough funding, or does it not affect the outcome?
Okay, so the question was if they have a lot of funding or if they don't.
Oh, well-funded.
If they are well-funded, oh, okay. No, so if they are well-funded, you should make sure that they have like a good track record of mentoring other students. And, maybe you should think about getting a co-sponsor just in case, like, for example, these big labs, they have a lot of students, and maybe someone in the NIH is going to know this person, and they're going to know that, like, oh, they have a lot of students, like maybe the training is not going to be so personal. So maybe consider adding someone else so that you kind of have, 2 people training you. But it's definitely not gonna, I don't think it's gonna hurt you. It's actually gonna probably give you a greater chance because, you come from a well-funded lab and your sponsor is someone who you know, if they are really well funded, they're probably well respected as well. So, but yeah, great question.
Yeah, agreed. Great question.
And then a timeline. So this is the timeline from the NIH. This is kind of like, you know, when you're preparing, kind of like 6 months, let's say. There is an internal deadline from your school, then it's due, then you wait about 3 months, then you have the review, and then comes council. So if your application, like if you had an impact score, a good impact score, and you know, you kind of know that you're gonna get funded, it's gonna go to council, and in council, what they do is it's kind of like a second review. Basically, they just make sure that they reviewed everyone's application and that everything's okay. And then also they might ask you for it's called a rebuttal. It's like, yeah, like, basically it's like a 1-page thing where you tell them all of the critiques from the reviewers and how you plan to address them. And they are gonna discuss this in council. So it may help you, you know, get funded. And then after council, I guess like a month passes, and you know, you wait, honestly. Your status is gonna change in the ERA Commons account, and you could wait, you know, you could either wait a little bit of time or a long amount of time. It depends. And also keep in mind that the fiscal year of the NIH, I think, ends in October. So, you know, you may not hear until like the end of September, because that's like the last. Do we have another question?
Yep. So we have a question on what would be a good impact score?
So that is gonna depend. That's a great question. That is gonna depend. So usually 20s, there's actually, if you look it up on Google, really, that's what I did. If you look it up on Google, you'll see that like 20 something is like a good score, like a good impact score, and you're probably gonna get funded. And then there are scores, 40 is probably, it's probably gonna get funded, but then like anything over 40, it's probably not gonna get funded. And anything in between 20 something and 30 something is also not gonna get funded. But it's something that if you get a score there, you should really talk to your program officer, because they're gonna be your greatest advocate. And it also, so every year, the institutes, they publish the pay line. So the pay line is basically which scores they're gonna fund. So they change every year. It depends on who applies, on the money that they have. So, you know, that they may change.
I have a question, Monica.
Yeah.
So if you get a rebuttal, is that a good sign of whether or not
Yes.
you're gonna get? Okay.
Yeah, so it's probably a really good sign if you get asked to do that, because they actually, in the email, they tell you like your grant is being considered for funding. And, you know, so that's like great news when you get that.
Okay. We have a question. Yesenia, yes. Okay, so I've heard they give a lot of emphasis to your grades. Any advice or feedback based on your experience?
So I've also heard that, that they give an emphasis to your grades. In my experience, they actually didn't mention anything about them, like none of the reviewers. But my advice is like the same for someone who's applying for grad school, or anything. If like you have a low GPA, something considered low, but something like a life-altering event or something was happening to you, you know, during that time where you got really bad grades, then you should definitely talk about that in your application. You could talk about it a little bit maybe in the personal statement in the Biosketch, or you can talk about it in the goals for training. You know, if you had to take care of someone sick, if you got sick and your grades went down, then that's just something that you should address.
Mm-hmm. We have a follow-up question on that from Angela. So would this be graduate school GPA or undergraduate or both? So is there an emphasis, you know, on one or the other or both? But yeah.
So you're not gonna have to, in any part of the application, you're not gonna have to like explicitly write your GPA or anything. It's in the Biosketch, you're gonna have to put the grades that you got in each course. But I would say that on both. So if you in undergrad, like you had a very bad GPA, but something happened to you, then address it, even if it's undergrad. And then, you know, if something happened to you in your PhD, also address it. But note that you're not going to have to say like, oh, it was 3 point something, you know. Okay. And then I just wanted to share my timeline. So I started thinking about it in July of 2019. I submitted in December of 2019. In March, I received a score and a summary statement. In May was the council meeting. In July, my ERA Commons status changed to pending. Pending is a good sign because it means that they're just waiting on some paperwork. And you know, they're gonna contact you for the paperwork. And then in September, a few weeks ago, I received my notice of award. Yeah.
Awesome.
We have another question.
Yes, from Kayla. Will we list undergraduate grades or if we are currently in graduate school? Yeah.
Can you say the question again?
I think this refers back to like follow-up for Yesenia's
question.
So it was, will we list undergraduate grades if we are in graduate school? So I believe it's regarding the Biosketch portion.
Yes, yeah. So for this fellowship, you have to be in grad school to apply. Yeah. And so here are like other parts. This is the table of contents from like when you submit, like this is how it looks, the final application. And it looks like a lot. I remember seeing it from someone else and I was just extremely overwhelmed. Like, how am I gonna do all this? But this is what helped me. So the sponsor, co-sponsor statement, letters of support, you don't have to do that. Like, that's not your problem. You just have to make sure that other people do it. The facilities, other resources, equipment, if your advisor is funded from the NIH, they have got to have this information already. It's just like, you have to say how many computers are in your lab, how large is your lab, etc. So that's also something that, you know, you may have to like tweak it, but you don't have to worry about that. And, you know, the human subjects part is your IRB proposal. So what you really have to, you know, make sure you work on is the background, the specific aims, research strategy, etc. Okay. So a few words of encouragement. Really don't get discouraged. Once you do it, you're like, oh, I did it. Like anything else, I guess. It's overwhelming, but it will be worth it. You'll learn a lot about grant writing, about the NIH, and about yourself, because nowhere in grad school do they have you really think about what is it that I want to do with my career. And, you know, you get to think about that, but also you get to think about like, what do I need to do in order to do that? So, you know, it's really great. And you already have written your dissertation proposal. Like, you literally can just turn in the research strategy. I mean, I don't know if your program, like what your program requires, but it's probably gonna be the same. And yeah, we finished. So thank you so much. And yeah, for general questions, we have the email there, and that's my email and my Twitter.
Yes, thank you so much. Any last minute question, guys? Any questions? All righty. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Oh, wait, I see a question. So, Angela, yes. So then just in time, what if you're not sure if the project you want to propose, you'll be completing during your PhD?
If the project you want to propose, can you, timeline. Oh, what?
There's a follow-up from Angela as well. What if you're not sure the project you want to propose will be completed during your PhD due to COVID, changing timelines for projects?
So I actually had to, in my rebuttal, I had to change, the way I was recruiting people because of COVID. So I actually could do my study online through Zoom, like HIPAA compliant Zoom. So, think about other ways in which you can do it. But if you can do at least, let's say you can't finish it because it's too long or something, you may want to propose at least part of it and then say that, you would like to finish this for postdoc. And, one of your goals could be writing the F32 and writing it on this other part of your project. But I bet they will be understanding because, they know that everyone's kind of going through this. So.
Great question. Thank you, Monica. We have one last question from Michelle. And they asked, sorry if this was already answered, but how many years of funding will you receive?
So you can get up to 5 years of funding.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so again, they fund you, they fund like your stipend, and you don't have to be a TA. Yay. And they pay for a percentage of your tuition, and they give you like $5,000 for traveling, for health insurance, etc. It's a lot of money. Yeah.
For sure. Another question from Yesenia. Does having preliminary data improve your chances?
Yeah, so even if it's just a little bit, like 5 people like I had, so I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say like improve your chances. It would just, it looks better. It looks better that you have already, you can show that what you're doing is feasible enough that you can do it, and that you care enough about it that you're already doing that.
Awesome. Another question. Is it highly recommended to have preliminary data for all your aims?
Oh, no. You don't have to have it for all the aims. It'll be ideal if you have it, but you don't have to have it for all of the aims. Especially if you have a lot of people for one of the aims, then, it wouldn't be expected for you to have a lot of people for every aim. They're also not going to fund something that's already done,
Right.
Yeah. So.
Great point. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah. So if, again, like as Monica said, if you have any general application questions, send it our way, or email Monica herself, who's a very recent recipient of the NIH F31. So, and go follow her on Twitter. There's her handle right there. And so if you are a mentor in our GSMI community, as Monica is herself, the slides will be posted in the GSMI members area. Otherwise, we have this live stream version on YouTube. And so hi, everyone, to those with us right now on the YouTube platform. But yeah, we will be uploading this presentation as well. So you can refer to any part of the application or to the presentation at any time within your schedule of your availability. So thank you guys so much. Yeah. And thank you, Monica.
Thank you so much.
Time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks.